Is Witch Hat Atelier an Astroturfed manga by the UN? Is it a structure in order to be able to get rid of the cultural hegemony of Japan and lead that culture into globalization? Is it used in order to show disdain for the cultural practices of drawing lollies in Japan? Well, if you follow a few people online, you would think so. Welcome to another episode of the Golfer Gare Bear Not a Podcast. We're going to jump straight into it this week because a story that I really enjoy and adore in Witch Hat Atelier has come under fire by the worst people in the anime and manga spaces online. These are the incels, chuds, lolicon enjoyers, white dudes in Mississippi who have multiple different body pillows that are extremely worried about Japan losing its cultural conservatism and hegemony. They're very upset about Witch Hat Atelier. Now, I would say they're mad that Shirahama, the mangaka of Witch Hat Atelier, did an interview with UNESCO, but that's just some way to divert to the fact that they don't want to say what they're actually upset about. These people constantly need it reaffirmed to them that their sexual proclivities and being attracted to hand-drawn children is totally normal and is totally okay. And they need an entire apparatus from a single country to constantly reinforce that and to always be available to them. So when a story like Witch Hat Atelier, which treats children like children and not objects of desire for white dudes in Mississippi or Tennessee with multiple different body pillows whose fiance left them after their friends treated them like a pariah. I'm getting off track here. This story is the pinnacle of what storytelling should be when involving children in anime and manga. When it comes to anime and manga, you hear a lot of people say they don't want anything to do with it or they haven't been around it because there is that extremely blurry line in terms of what Japan allows in terms of sexual proclivity when it comes to people of a younger and younger age. We're talking about children to teenagers to young women. And that line seems to be all over the place for them. Is the age of consent 16 and what they can draw 16 and above? What is it that can actually be sold in different stores? What is it that can actually be shown online or be sold through media and sold in video games? I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in knowing exactly where Japan as a society draws that line, but from what we've seen as anime and manga fans is that more often than not, they're okay with really bending around that and drawing media and creating video games and creating anime that for most people in the rest of the world is a bit over the line. And when I say a bit over the line, very over the line. There's different stories where if somebody doesn't like Fire Force because of Tamaki, I cannot imagine the reactions they would have to the kinds of things that lolicon enjoyers would enjoy. The revulsion that they would have immediately would make their head spin. And rightfully so. It's actually super weird to be attracted to hand-drawn children. I don't care what little memes you get to make. The consensus of catharsis theory has shown time and time again through different meta-analyses that this is not something that actually works. It actually reinforces your attraction towards children, and it's something that you should assess rather than coming online and pretending like you're doing nothing wrong or you're not leading into something that is potentially harmful for children down the road. Obviously, this opens up a gigantic can of worms when it comes to what you should and shouldn't be able to depict in media, and that becomes a slippery slope when it comes to what is or is not positive censorship, or is any censorship positive. It's a larger discussion to be had at another time, but I think with Witch Hat Atelier, what really upsets these kinds of people online is that the story will not reinforce that in any way, shape, or form. Every time that Witch Hat Atelier hits a moment where in a lesser story they would reinforce those kinds of sexual proclivities, it goes in the complete opposite direction. It actively works against those kinds of things. To give an example that, like, I guess is spoilers but doesn't really spoil anything, is the girls go to, like, a healing bath when they're in the big witches society, like the place where all the witches live, and they're, like, completely clothed. Like, they have clothes on entirely. Like, in no way was this meant to be titillating or something that would be sexually provocative for anybody. because the girls are treated like children in the way that they should be treated like children. Now, this isn't their only issue with Witch Hat Atelier. Obviously, it extends out to, being warriors against diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, remember, these are white dudes in Mississippi and Tennessee with multiple body pillows who are extremely concerned about the cultural conservatism within Japan. And having any type of reflection of a society that doesn't constantly reinforce cultural hegemony and xenophobia, they obviously see a reflection of a world that they don't want to see, because these people are bigots, incels, chuds, lolicon enjoyers, and are absolutely weird. And Witch Hat Atelier in no way strays away from these kinds of things, and it doesn't seem forced. Having different races of people within the story without just making them like magical monstery beings. Like, there's people of all skin tones, there's people of all races within this story without it feeling ham-fisted. These are just people that exist within this world of Witch Hat Atelier, and they're given character and they're given reason to exist without just being props to say that a DEI quota is hit. But again, if you ask these people online, that's what it's there for. Shirahama's trying to hit a UN DEI bar or something like that. Again, their ideas of how these things work and their disdain for these things they're never consistent. They're not logically consistent because these are not their actual frustrations. No, what they're upset about is that a lot of people online will show love and adoration towards Witch Hat Atelier. I've seen it in my own comments when I've talked about it. They will show love and adoration towards a story like this where they won't for the stories those people enjoy, because Witch Hat Atelier does not lead into those kinds of proclivities, the things that most people, I would say, are beyond uncomfortable with, that find disgusting or find extremely abhorrent. And they're upset at times because UNESCO has been like, well, it's kind of weird that Japan continues to create this media, especially in a society that has a lot of issues with femicide and has a lot of issues with the perversion of men within that society, in that they're constantly being groped. There's a million different names and techniques and tactics that men will take just in a train station alone to try and brush up against women in order to just feel them throughout the day. And it's constantly happening, to the point that women in Japan have Japan-only cars during major commuting hours in order to be separated from men that would try these different tactics. I'm not kidding. There's a million. You can look it up online where different women talk about all the different little things Japanese men will do in order to try and get them to touch them. And that leads into the discussion of what really is Witch Hat Atelier. And with the interview that Shirahama did, I found it really interesting because it's pretty boilerplate in terms of the questions. It's, how does one become a mangaka? In your view, what defines an excellent manga artist? How do you see manga as a form of artistic expression? Shirahama gives really great answers to these questions, but also she talks about how it's great that women are able to be a part of the manga industry using anonymity. And this seems to be something people online are also pissed about. For some reason, it's frustrating for them to see these kinds of things be culturally reflected. At the end of the day, what incels, chuds, lolicon enjoyers, white dudes in Tennessee who own multiple body pillows want to see is the perfect Japan. But even as someone who spent 2 weeks there, you can kind of see it. And if you spend any time reading stories that aren't just about young children being objectified for their pleasure, you can see that just like any other society, they have the issues that they need to deal with, and these things can be screamed out in their media. Specifically thinking about Goodnight Pun Pun. Like, Pun Pun, Asano is tapping into the disdain for the society that they have built, the capitalism mixed with this traditionalist society that has become so distorted that people find meaning in cults, and they don't know how to move forward without every single thing they do seemingly being wrong. And the proclivity for violence living underneath these people's skin, just constantly being ready to burst, but you're not allowed to show it. You're not allowed to express it in any way, shape, or form. You have to hide it. These stories are so fascinating because you get a deeper glimpse into Japanese society where it's not just a perfect reflection of young girls are there to be the objects of desire for grown men. And again, a mangaka who reinforces the idea that like it's actually good that most women who work within the manga industry have a level of anonymity that completely separates them from their work in order to be able to express themselves fully artistically and not be at the guise or the ire of even like a male readership. Even if they enjoyed it, I imagine there's still repercussions. And seeing the response of this, and what makes me happy is you can see online when the post went around, there was a couple from like Anime Updates and like all these different folks talking about all the different quotes within the interview with Shirahama, and you would see like, oh, it's a block party in the quotes, right? Because on Twitter, you can quote tweet something where you have the tweet underneath your tweet, and I've got a laundry list that I included in a video on TikTok where it's just showing people saying the most asinine things because, again, they're just upset that their proclivities are not being reinforced and that there is a large group of people online who are celebrating that. That's probably got to be the thing that hurts them the most. That's got to be the thing that really crushes them, is that there are enough people online for them to constantly see it reflected back at them, even if they've built their little echo chamber. Just by the nature of algorithms and showing you something new, they end up seeing people who have a complete disdain for the things that they're into because they're not normal. And it should be rallied against. You should be working against these kinds of things if you're a content creator and if you are affronted by these things. I'm not saying every single content creator has to be as politically outspoken as me. It'd be nice, but I understand that I probably really skate the line, especially when it comes to somebody like, I don't take any brand deals on TikTok. I've never done it. I never participate in any of the like special little extra things you can do where you like use a song or you talk about like a different like post event or something like that. I never do any of that stuff because I never want anybody to be able to influence what I want to say out loud. And again, I understand why people aren't always like that, especially because the kind of heat it can bring you. I one time, because of the way that I've spoken out about this, I had this guy who was some British guy, and he made this 10-minute video where he like recorded his screen with his phone, and he's screaming at his like computer monitor that he's better looking than me, he has more money than me, he talks to more women than me. I'm married, so that doesn't really matter to me. And then he proceeds to take a still of me and then draw me in a gallows with him sitting on top of it. And, like, that's the kind of thing you're going to end up running into when you challenge these kinds of ideas, when you challenge people who do not want to be challenged and hold ideas that, in my mind, they have to know they're wrong, right? Like, in some way, they have to know that the constant reinforcement of their enjoyment of this is a show not for us, but for them. That they constantly need to reaffirm to themselves that what they're doing is right and that it's normal and it's fine. And it's why they have to come up with all of these different tactics, not only to defend it when people are against it, but any time that something like Witch Hat Atelier comes up and a large group of people become champions of Witch Hat Atelier because it's finally reflecting media, especially depicting children in the way that they want to, they have to find every kind of way possible to criticize it, even one that sounds as ridiculous as funded by the UN and Astroturfed, when it's already sold, before the anime came out, it had already sold 8 million copies. For a manga that does not come out in one of the most popular magazines, that's massive. It had already won an Eisner Award in 2020. I'm no fan of Disney, but it's kind of the same thing with the Oscars. Like it's still like a stupid academy, but at the end of the day, the people who are a part of these like worlds of creating manga or talking about specifically movies with the Oscars, they appreciate it. So I give it that weight, right? Like you talk to directors or movie stars, like they give the Oscars some weight. And that's the weight that I'll give to it. But I try not to be too adherent to awards, unless it's Urasawa and people are trying to speak bad on him. Shirahama was already winning these awards prior to the anime ever being announced. Like, this is a manga that the people who appreciate manga and anime for truly an art form that can depict incredible stories in the same way that a novel can or a movie can or a television show can gravitate towards and see a beautiful world reflected back at them where they know the mangaka is not taking apart questionable actions. And what we can honestly hope, right? Like, I try to say don't put your stock in any mangaka. I've said that before in different videos, but I think this is like one of the rare times where you can try and do that, right? You can try and put your stock in them, because I think the ultimate fear is that they're always the next Watsuki. Like, that's like the ultimate fear of the guy who wrote Toriko. That's like the greatest fear. But by every single account and every action that we can find that Shirahama has taken since being a mangaka and anything that we know about her before, she's someone that you can champion, which, again, just feels so incredibly rare. And it's why I try and, as much as I talk about One Piece, I try and refrain from, like, gassing up Oda. Because while Oda is a phenomenal writer, there's obviously questionable decisions in his adoration of Watsuki, and then you get into the questioning of, well, what would you do if that was your mentor? And how would you respond? And, you know, most of us would say, well, obviously, we just get away from that entirely, and, we would disown this person, which you should. We're talking about CSAM here. But in Japan, it's viewed just culturally differently. And Oda's not young. Like, he's not a kid. So, I don't know. I'm going down a tangent of just the internal battle of what level of support do you have for these people, and how can you look to them in terms of just reflecting the views that you want to see. And quite frankly, the only two that I know of where I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt reflect my views. And maybe if you're watching me, especially as I start this YouTube journey out, this is still a pretty, young journey that I'm on. You're probably a golfer fan from, previous videos where I've been outspoken about my politics. The only two I respect in that way, politically, are Shirahama and Urasawa. The only people I know of that consistently, with their work, do not reinforce those kinds of behaviors. They constantly champion diversity and have drawn specifically for Palestine. I would murder to have, I believe it's a signed copy of Monster, or a signed art of Monster, of one of the cover arts, to own that. I don't know how many thousands of dollars it's worth. I want it so bad. Anything Urasawa's done, I want a piece of. So that's my little spiel when it comes to Hat Atelier. And I think it's just a beautiful manga. The anime is great. I really want to talk about the storylines that happened during and after Silver's Eve. So I want to start putting up a bit more content when it comes to Hat Atelier, because, again, this is something I want to champion and I want to see do really well. It really makes me happy when I see in my comments that someone is going to start a manga because of me. It happened a bunch with Hunter x Hunter, and how I talked about how the manga, in my opinion, is much better than the anime, even though the anime is made with a ton of love and adoration and is a phenomenal adaptation. There's just certain things you can't translate, and you run into that with Hat Atelier as well. As great as an anime adaptation it is, there's always going to be things that you just are so blown away by that Shirahama is able to put on paper. And I really want to talk about some of the storylines from Silver's Eve, which are the most... that arc wrapped up, I think, 2 or 3 chapters ago, and then now we've hit a new point in the story. We're starting down a different journey here. We're going into a new arc. But it was like kind of like a filler chapter in the most recent chapter. So, I mean, we'll see. Anyway, that's my spiel on Hat Atelier. Don't be a weirdo. And support something that is worthy of your support. Anyways, let's jump into some stuff that I read this week and Kagurabachi Corner. All right, a couple things that I want to get jumped off with initially before we talk about Kagurabachi. We obviously have chapter 1180 of One Piece. Again, I have anime onlys in the audience. Hell of a chapter. Hell of a chapter. I mean, wow. What an incredible piece of work. I think Oda has done a few things within this chapter that I've been a bit critical of. I think the art has taken a bit of a downturn. I think the pages are a bit too busy. This feels like, and not the whole thing, right? There's still some pages that are a little overly busy. There's still a lot of pages where there's black lines shrouding everything. But for the most part, it's been absolutely incredible to see what's going on in Elbaf and the development of the story. But again, I won't get too far into it because, again, I don't want to spoil anything. I caught up on Ultimate Exorcist Kyoshi. Just a fun manga. Just a fun story to read because it's, I mean, there's no other way to describe it besides like balls to the wall action, like 24/7. Nothing happens in this manga besides people fighting, and it's super cool. And it's not really your traditional like exorcist story. It gives no weight to spirituality. It gives absolutely nothing to it. It's just imagery at the end of the day. They have like crosses, and then like the school that they went to, like where they had to take their exorcist tests, was a church. But the vast majority of the story is just people whooping ass, and it's awesome. And I've really enjoyed catching back up to it. It's not a manga that I want to keep up with every single week on a weekly basis. I want to let a fight finish before I catch up back with it. But that's just me being cognizant of weekly readership and knowing what stories I want to read weekly and which ones I don't. So that's one of the ones that I will let have some time now that I've caught up to it, and then catch back up whenever I feel like getting back around to it. I think I had like 12 chapters to catch up on this one. I'm getting the itch and the urge to read Tokyo Ghoul Re. I don't want too much of Tokyo Ghoul to escape me because I really enjoyed Tokyo Ghoul and I want to be able to jump back in. I needed a little bit of room to breathe with Tokyo Ghoul. It's a very emotional and weighty story. So I'm really excited to get back into Tokyo Ghoul Re. And then we had Kingdom this week. Kingdom is so good. Chapter 872. And I thought this was actually a pretty nice turn away from the way that the story had been going. I still see some complaints about it online. There's a general complaint within Kingdom that one of the main adversary for basically the entire story has one move. Well, technically two. One is being the greatest strategist on the battlefield, and the only person who's ever really been able to overcome his strategy is our main character, Shin. Shin has become an instincts general, whereas Roboku is his name, is a planning general. He's a strategy general. And instincts are the only thing that can break through the greatest strategy, is kind of what Kingdom tries to imply. And Roboku has a superpower within the series of just constantly being able to find more strong people or a bigger army or anything that he wants in order to try and stop whatever's happening in front of him. At the beginning of this arc, he pulled out the #1 bow of China from the 10 bows of China. It's the greatest archers. But that gave a couple of characters that we've had around for, 400 or so chapters now, some time to shine. It was awesome. That whole sequence was super cool. Now we've got this instance where the thing that's happening, right, is they're invading Zhao, right? Qin is invading Zhao after taking down the Han Kingdom, and they've bolstered their army to 440,000 soldiers, and they're moving from left to right, right? They're invading from the west side. And there's one long line of the Qin warriors and all their different armies, and then there's a line on the inside for all of the Zhao armies, and they're all kind of having their own little pocket fights. But the strategy that Roboku is doing is taking a front line and then having a back line immediately ready for if a Qin army were to break through, they would now be surrounded on all sides. It's like let them through and then we collapse around them, but the Qin army has been able to kind of hold off on jumping too far ahead of themselves. They've recognized that this strategy is taking place. So now we're seeing a group of characters. So Muten, who is one of like the big three of the like up and coming generals. He's one of Shin's contemporaries. We have Shin, and then we have Shin's future wife and Kyokai, an assassin. All three of them are leading a charge straight into three armies at the same exact time to try and break through so that they can't reassemble behind them, and then they can break through that second line because they know they need to get through that second line. And people online are like, oh, Roboku did it again. He's got more people in the back. The only issue I'm running into is we know these people in the back. These aren't brand new people. I mean, Earl Ray, the Zhao general in the second line, is somebody we've already met before. This isn't some brand new character that we haven't met before. And then we've also got new strategists. But the other thing is they're all like people who study under Roboku, so they're obviously going to be strong. But like they have more strategists. Like this is just understanding more characters. This is closer to world building than just pulling out an infinitely strong person. This isn't Shogun-kun or the guy that was like the number one bow in China or anybody that he's ever pulled out of Ganyu or in my opinion, or Ganmon, not Ganyu, Ganmon. I think this is a reasonable group of people to have kind of show up at this point. And maybe I'll show like the diagram of the Haishin unit, the Kyokai army, and the Gakuka that are all kind of like creating this one big move. My big thing right now, if you're a Kingdom fan, if you're caught up, I need Kyokai to put on the helmet. So Kyokai has become a general, and she's absolutely out of her mind. Like, she's super cool. She's also like an assassin and saved Shin's life on numerous occasions. But Kyokai has a helmet because she's upgraded her armor to this like silver plate armor, and her army like made it for her. And she won't put on the damn helmet. I want to see the helmet so bad. That's all I want to see. I want to see her in the helmet. Because I spent, 870 chapters with her. I want to see her in the helmet. It'd be super cool. Anyways, that's catching up on Kingdom. In my opinion, I don't think there's another this long-running manga that I know of or am aware of that Kingdom. I've said it before. There's not another manga like Kingdom. When I caught up to Kingdom last year, I spent 3 months trying to fill that void because it's so dense and does things that no other manga even attempts to do. I mean, we're talking real staged wars are happening, and this is based off of historical records from a record called the Shiji and other different historical records from the time that were gathered by the Han Dynasty, which happens after the Qin Dynasty. So you got to take them with a grain of salt. I don't want to see any Mercury comments in the I don't want to see any Mercury comments. That's basically been disproven. But anyways, there's just nothing else quite like it. And it's such a special story, and you just become so ingrained. Like, I so badly want to go see the Terracotta Warriors, because the Terracotta Warriors are based off the Qin Warriors, and there's a Terracotta Warrior specifically for General Ri Shin, our main character here. And there's Terracotta Warriors for Usen and Uten, who are two other generals. Uten is one of the big three. He's with Muten and Shin as the up-and-comers. Usen is Uten's father. And I just want to see, I want to see where they fought. I want to see the Yellow River that Qin crossed. I want to see the Wei Kingdom. I want to see where Kanyu was, and like how it's so far inland too. Like, especially, there's great reason to go to China and to see all of the tier 1 major cities, especially the ones that kind of border the coast. But this is such a great reason to go inland and go see some of the more inland stuff and learn about Chinese history. And I have a dream of one day making a kingdom video where I specifically go to China and talk to different historians and talk to people that understand what the Qin dynasty was like and what Rixin was like, and are able to give some information. Because the Shiji, the record that this is all based off of, has never fully been translated into English. There's been different projects that have been started to do it, but they've never been finished. So I've always wanted to read that. I want to lay eyes on the Shiji. And that's just a dream I have one day. Anyways, Kagurabachi Corner time. All right, Kagurabachi Corner, Chapter 119, the Irashima Talks Part 3. We pick up, again, exactly where we left off, with the character who had his throat slit. We see that these people desperately, being the Mikaboshi, prayed to the Dattenseki. This introduces such an interesting note into Kagurabachi that this literal giant ore granted somebody's wish. This is fascinating. And I mean, with the imagery that we see in chapter 119, hopefully you're reading along with me, or if you're listening along, make sure to double back on the chapter. I mean, look at the imagery. It's so, like, are we kidding? Hokusano is for sure influenced by Dune. I mean, look at them in their little, like, palace underneath the Dattenseki inside of that sphere. But to see the people falling into the water as the king of the Mikaboshi sank into the ocean, the stone answered their prayers with powers conferred by the stone in the darkness of the ocean floor. He created a country for us alone. I mean, wow. And it's just so cool. And I've been listening to some Godfather recap podcasts of some folks who work in movies, and it's guys at The Ringer, and they're also talking to a guy named Brian Koppelman. And there's something about the prince, Aryu, excuse my pronunciation if it's bad. I'm always bad with pronunciation. The crown prince of the Mikaboshi sits like Michael does in The Godfather Part 2. And I might be reading a little bit too much into it when it comes to the movie influence that Hokusano really shows. But, like, I'm sitting how Michael sits in The Godfather Part 2. And it reminds me so much of it. And, of course, Shiba tries to come in with the nonsense defense that, like, we're acting merely in self-defense. This was a hostile negotiation coming in right away, and a member of the Soga clan being here is just such a spit in the face of the Mikaboshi. And then Hokusano does what only Hokusano seems to be able to do, which is bring us something so brand new that I can't think of a single instance where we've seen speed translated this way in the manga. We have what is his name? I cannot remember his name right now. The dude with the white tuft in his hair that's been, throwing death flags the entirety of Kagurabachi. Apologies. I forgot his name. I have terrible active recall. But when Shiba says, "What?" and he looks over at the representative from Japan with the ooze coming from his eyes, and then we have what we assume to be the king of the Mikaboshi saying, "I came to bear witness." And then in the reflection of the water, we see as Aryu dashes towards him and blows a hole in his abdomen. And Shiba says, "No way." But that dude locks in and just pushes him together using his sorcery. And he says, "You wasted your ambush on me." And all the sorcerers come at him. And of course, Shiba grabs him and says, "Take a rest." And they poof out of the air. Absolutely insane. And they're back on an island. I don't know where they are because there's like forestry. Maybe they're just further back. But the speed that Hokusano is able to translate throughout this chapter is otherworldly. And she was thinking, like, I thought Hiruto finished him. That ambush was insane. And then we see as Hiruto Soga says Kurotsuchi. And we get some understanding of the type of sorcery being passed down through the Soga clan. And it looks like a gravity is, like, pushing down on Aryu. And what I found so interesting, and this was pointed out on Twitter, I saw as well, that Hiruto's sorcery with the like ball that sits behind him is so much smaller in comparison to his ancestor. That like so far removed from this initial conflict, this sorcery has lost its gumption. And we see him pull out his sword and he flips the grip in his hand and I'll do it with the right hands. He bops it from the top and it sends Aryu down, and in the like eyes that Hokusano is able to translate, the pain he seems to be in, and the like spider webs growing out of his eyes, the cracks growing, unbelievable. And then we see one of the heads of the Mikaboshi warriors that showed up initially saying, "We must not allow the enemy to seize the throne. They promised." And we see a mother holding a child, or a woman holding a child, and then we see a bunch of bugs. And we get our Lisan al-Gaib moment with Aryu walking to the center of this stage and with crushed up bugs, and what I imagine there has to be like Dattenseki in it or something like that, right? This crushed up liquid, and he downs it. And they are shrouded in black. Like the ability to ingest the Dattenseki and to be one with it is so incredible. And the end of this chapter, with Aryu being smushed down, and then says Sumika. And I think the lines, the cracks around his eyes are growing, but it all changes. Because it says the Guardians can draw upon the true realm of the Dattenseki. I think we're about to see an absolute massacre. And it looks like Centipede that Akamura Soga uses. And this introduces a lot of really interesting conversation, because Kunishige Rokuhira created the blades, but did not necessarily create their abilities. Kunishige creates the blades and gave them a purpose. And what we've assumed for a long time is all of the different blades besides the Magatsumi had a purpose that was specifically aiding in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like whatever the Magatsumi true purpose is, it's got to be something along the lines of win this the only way we can. This is the only avenue we have to winning, and giving it to a Soga clan member who I can only imagine sees the strength of this clan and sees the strength of the Mikaboshi, and understands that their sorcery, their abilities, their ability to channel the Dattenseki is some type of nature where they are able to express themselves explicitly through it, because that's how Akamura Soga uses the Magatsumi. He has no limitation. He has no like set abilities. He can just reshape it to however he needs to. And maybe because he is not somebody who is a Mikaboshi, he has to create that ability where it's constantly sucking the life force out of everybody around him, creating the flowers in order to constantly re-nourish himself so that the Dattenseki doesn't take him over or make him explode. And it's just unbelievable how this story, as this has moved along, every single chapter builds upon itself in a way that I seriously can't think of anything else that makes me feel this way every single week. So at where I live, at 10 a.m., as soon as this chapter drops, I'll usually be cooking in my kitchen with my wife, like getting stuff ready for dinners this week. And I will just be hunched over, like 10 o'clock hits, like no matter what I'm doing, I'm just hunched over, reading this off my phone and re-looking at this chapter. I mean, it's just, I'm so in awe. And there's so much to gain from it, right? Like, they create look how big this world is underneath the ocean and it's unrecognized by the people of our own world for so long. Like, they're in modern technology times by the time that the Mikaboshi show back up. We're talking like ocean cartography here, based off of what we understand, you know, what everything looks like. They look like they're in modern society. And this completely shrouded. I mean, like 200,000 people, I assume, are shrouded by the ore. What place will this ore have? Because it's functioning as their god. And by all intents and purposes, it's accomplishing all the things that it saved them, it shrouded and hid them, and made it so that they could finally seek their retribution. Like, of course you would think this rock is a god. Where does this thing exist now? That's the question. Nowadays, whatever is going... I'm almost more interested in what's going on in the past than I am in what Chihiro is going to do about Akamura Soga and maybe eventually Yura. Like, this is so insane. I'm absolutely mind blown with every single chapter, and there's so much lore that gets dropped into this. And the ability... man, it looks like he's making the same finger... And I personally think Hokusano does a lot with hands, right? You see it constantly. They're really well drawn, and they're drawn in specific ways, like when they're about to do EI White Purity style, and they're always pointing at who they're going to be using it against, and kind of the loose grip that Chihiro will have. And the point and the blast looks just like Dragonfly, but he doesn't need to say it. Aryu doesn't need to say it. I mean, Aryu comes back to life. He's not dead. How does this function? How does this work? Oh, it's so incredible. And also, one of the things I've learned online recently was that Hokusano had gone to school to do like furniture design, like interior design stuff. And the couch and the coffee table look so cool every single time that you see them. The two couches, they look so sick. And I'm just... Every time I'm reading this manga, I am just over myself and just... And some people still think it's a meme. It's not a meme. Oh, it drives me insane when people are like, yeah, I heard about that one, but isn't it a meme? No! It's not a meme. Drives me insane. There's a lot of questions to be asked, and I need to think quite a bit more about it. I've been very busy today. I got to see my best friends. We went and got brunch. Got to see my nephew. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to really ruminate on what's going on. I need to also look into what is the translation for Kurotsuchi. And obviously we need to look into the translation of what Sumika means. Am I even pronouncing that correctly? I want to dive further into this. There's a part of me that thinks, in a way, Japan wins, right? Akamura Soga gets rid of the Mikaboshi, or at least what we understand what's left of the Mikaboshi. And for some reason, they can't make the same decree to the stone. Whoever would need to make the prayer to the stone can't do it at that point in time, or is killed off, or whatever it is. Where is this rock? The Japanese government for sure doesn't have it, right? I mean, the Sazanami clan? Is it the Sazanami? The people that all the sorcerers work with. They would have... No, it's not the Sazanami clan. Kagurabachi. What is the name of the sorcerer group? Yeah, we got different sorcerer clans. You know, let's look at the clans. The Masumi, the Azami, the Soga. Whatever the name of it is. God, dude, my active recall is so terrible. I apologize for that. They didn't have access to it. The people that have the force field that were hiding Akamura Soga and you know, everybody works with. I need to do a reread. That's what this means. I'm forgetting names, which means I need to do a reread. That decides it, folks. Thank you for joining today for the Golfer Gare Bear Not a Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, thank you, Honey Man Hokazano, and thank you, Peyton Manning.